Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our scholarly examination of the Legend of Kamui. We're up to numbers 14 through 17, and this begins a new chapter in the story of Kamui. Once again, we have another nicely painted cover. In the letter pages of one of these issues, they finally tell us why so many of these covers have nothing to do with the contents of the comic. I guess they just had like 20 paintings of Kamui that Sanpei Shirato made, or at least access to them. And they're from various other comics. I gotta say, I would have preferred, I usually don't like this, but I would have preferred if they just had a very nice graphic design of panels from the stories as the cover, because it's kind of ridiculous having even if it's a nice cover, but it doesn't show you what's in the comic. It's from it was drawn for a completely different story, but that's neither here nor there. Still a nice cover. So here we start the Sword Wind. This is chapter 1. This is part 1 of chapter 1, the Owari Yagyu. We start off in Miya, which is in Owari, or region of Japan. We're in a small city, and we see this wandering swordsman, Sakon Ikatsuji. He's on a bridge. He's surrounded by these guys who are confronting him. They're swordsmen as well. They want to kill him. They demand revenge for their swordmaster's death. And Sakon says, hey, it was a fair duel. You know, you got no right to ask for revenge. But they're not buying it. So they attack. And for Kamui, this is a pretty truncated fight scene. It's pretty quick. One of the things I love about Kamui and other manga, not that I've read a lot, but like Lone Wolf and Cub, for example, you can have like a 20-page fight scene that shows all the choreography, you know, in sharp detail. It's still a pretty damn good fight scene. This guy makes short work of these guys. They're definitely not in his league. He just plows through them. Chops off their arms. And then he just wanders off. Apparently in the crowd watching, though, is this guy with kind of looks like a mushroom helmet. And as he walks away, he says, he's better than I expected. So he apparently knows of this guy. Now we, within Owari, the camera, the scene changes to this hill area. And we're at the Owari branch of the Yagyu clan. There's the Ito branch and the Owari branch. And so they got a castle here. The swordsmaster of this Han is Genpo Yagyu. He's the official swordsmaster. And I guess he's the master of the Shinkage School of Swordsmanship, which nobody else knows how to do. They kind of keep it a secret. Meanwhile, outside, we see this young guy. He's this kid getting some water. He works for the castle. And out of nowhere, we see a hand throwing a stick that trips him, so he spills all his water. And it turns out it's that Sakon Ikatsuji guy. And he says something like, and here I thought you might have had some talent, as if he knew of this kid. We'll see more of him later. So he goes to the castle, and basically he demands a match with Genpo Yagyu, the master swordsman. And this retainer says, our school forbids matches with swordsmen from a different school. But he won't leave. So he tells Genpo, and Genpo says, take care of him to his second in command. His second in command is Izumo Shima, a very formidable swordsman in his own right. So he goes out there to meet him and basically realizes this guy isn't going to take no for an answer. So he says, fine, I'll give you a match. And you can see the Shinkage style close up. The fight begins, and it's pretty evenly matched. I love this panel here. It's just so sketchy, but totally implies like the speed at which they're fighting. These guys are just doing shit the human eye probably can't even see. So yeah, Sakon's totally holding his own, and it ends up in a draw. So as he leaves the castle, he sees that kid, and he says, do you have any idea where your master Genpo went to? They said he's out. And he says, I heard he might be at the Harukan Zen temple. So Sakon heads over there, and Genpo's there. He basically challenges him to a duel and says, you cannot refuse a challenge to a duel. So Genpo agrees. And then in the woods, all of a sudden, Izumo shows up, the second in command. He's just going to watch, though. So they have their fight, and really quickly, Genpo gets the best of him and runs him through with his sword. Look at that. That's great stuff. So he asks Izumo, his second in command, he asks him about how the sword is coming along. I guess this master swordsmith is making him a sword. And then they notice that Utsutse, the kid, that's his name, he was in the woods watching the whole time. And Genpo orders him to remove the body and take it to the usual place, which he does. Meanwhile, we see the master swordsman making this amazing new sword. And once again, this is like 5 pages are just showing this guy making a sword. It's almost like an instructional comic, you know? This is probably why I wasn't that thrilled with Kamui when I got these when I was like in college. Scenes like this, I was probably like, oh man, come on, get on with the story. But for some reason, I love it now. Like those scenes of them drying their fish in the first few issues. I don't know why. It's kind of interesting just seeing how people do things. I love this face here. From, like I said earlier, you know, I'm pretty much a novice to manga. I've read a big chunk of like horror manga, mostly by Ito. And I've read all the Lone Wolf and Cubs and some other stuff by those guys. But I don't really know much. And so I'm learning like the styles of manga. But this like manga like from the 70s and 80s, I see so much like American underground comics in that for some reason. Like it's really kind of rough hewn, but it's really expressive. And I wonder if those guys were looking at each other. I don't know. Who knows? So there we go. The sword's made. And Genpo takes it out to this area in the woods. And they take the body of the corpse of Sakon. And they tie it up to this thing. Man, look at that. Speaking of Ito, that's pretty horrifying. This dead corpse just propped up. And the reason why, you could probably figure it out. This is how samurai would try out a new blade with actual flesh. And then we get like 4 pages of just gnarly gore. Like shown in just total detail. He's not skimping. Man. See, I probably would have loved this comic when I was 15. I was a Fangoria kid. I would have been like, wicked. Oh, God, look at that. And he's very pleased with his blade. I guess it's a masterpiece. Okay, number 15. We got a flying woman on the cover. She's not in the comic. It's a nice painting, nonetheless. So now we have part 2 of the Iwari-Yagyu, which is the second, part of the Swordwind, chapter 1. So now we're back at the castle in Owari. And we see Utsutse chopping wood, and he notices stirring in the woods. And we can see that guy with the the mushroom helmet. And Utsutse throws his axe at him. This guy grabs it, leaps out. I love this panel. Just it's so dynamic the way it's just like, whoo, all speed lines. It's almost like the speed lines completely obscure him. Does this amazing flip. That's another amazing panel. Throws it, but purposefully misses him and throws it into the tree stump. And that's because it turns out they know each other. So they're both up in these tree branches. And Utsutse basically says, Kogashira. Now, Kogashira, this mushroom helmeted guy, that's not his name. That's like a rank in the ninja clan. It's like a middle rank. And apparently, this Kogashira basically sent Utsutse to this castle in Owari to learn the Shinkage style, or just to learn swordsmanship in general. And then this is weird. They do this a couple times. All of a sudden, they're two crows talking to each other. Now, I don't know. There's not that much supernatural stuff in Kamui, as far as I know. In fact, there's been none. Maybe it's something that's going to appear later on. So I think this is like symbolic. Because, you know, it's their ninja skills, whatever. I don't know what's going on. But it's kind of neat. And he basically tells Utsutse that he's got a job for his new skill. Meanwhile, we're back at the castle. This is a little while later. And the guys are training in the Shinkage style. And Utsutse is intently watching them. And he's, you know, duplicating their moves. So he's not supposed to learn the Shinkage style. He's, you know, just basically like an apprentice. He's not there yet. But he's been secretly figuring it out on his own by spying on these guys. Izumoshima, the second in command, returns, and he notices that there's all these mushrooms on the ground. And he's surprised by this. He says, this area should have been swept clean this morning. And as he goes to pick up a mushroom, the spear comes out of nowhere. And Izumo deftly knocks it out of the air. And it turns out it's Kogashira. And it's like he wasn't even trying to kill him. That was just his way of greeting. He's there to talk to Genpo. It's kind of strange. I was a little confused. Because the next page, they're calmly having a little parlay. So the Kogashira basically says, I got to take back Utsutse. We really need him. And Genpo is kind of disappointed. She basically tells him he's a great student. I was kind of hoping he'd stay on. He was doing really well. But I guess they have no right to keep him, and they have to give him back. So Genpo says, okay, get out of here, basically, and we'll send him in a day or so and arrange for a meeting place for him. Now, there's another weird thing about this story arc. We see the Kogashira throw his mushroom cap away. He has it later. We keep seeing this motif of these ninja characters throwing their hat into the air. And it seems to have nothing to do with like the plot or anything. And then the next scene, they have their hat again. I don't quite understand. Maybe it's a Japanese thing. I don't know. So later on, once again, we get these beautiful shots of nature. Shirato's so good at that. And out in the woods, Genpo has asked Utsutse to join him, basically to give him a farewell. And he says, as a gift to you, as a parting gift, I'm going to teach you a sword technique, the Mountain Shadow. And he says, attack me. Man, that's such a great panel there. Sometimes I even see like the Spanish artists, like Victor de la Fuente in this art too, and not Esteban Morato. I can't think of his name right now. Oh, Juan Jimenez, those guys. And we can see by the looks on their faces, this isn't just a little training match. Something's going on. And Utsutse is way better than Genpo had any idea of. And he's actually repelling this attack. He's just this kid. And remember, Genpo was like the master swordsman, the official swords master. And Utsutse even tells him, he says, I felt there was more death than education in your sword. I'm afraid I had to dodge. Once again, flies his hat in the air and then takes off. So his second in command, Uzumo, shows up. And I guess that kid even like slashed his arm. Utsutse even slashed his arm. I mean, he's a pretty formidable little fighter. And he's like, Genpo tells Uzumo, he's like, he obviously knows our techniques too well. He shouldn't know them, but somehow he does. He's stolen them. So I want you to go track him down and kill him. He can't leave with our technique. So now we see Utsutse traveling through Japan. I love this shit. Just beautiful panels. And he's just leaping around like a jackrabbit. And then all of a sudden the squirrel comes up to him and says, you're late. And it's, of course, it's Kogashira. But once again, doing this thing of like talking through animals. And then he just pops up. He's there as in human form. So the Kogashira finally tells Utsutse why he needs him. He says Fudo has been killed. That was one of the ninjas from the first story arc, or the second. And I guess Fudo raised Utsutse since he was a little boy, because his parents were killed when he was young. So of course he's furious. And the Kogashira says, do you want revenge? And Utsutse says, of course. And you probably can figure out who the target's going to be. It's Kamui. Because Kamui killed Fudo. Once again, throws his hat. We even see it landing in the river. He threw away his hat earlier, but it's back in his back. I don't get it. But we do get to see more beautiful panels, so who cares? So now we see Uzumo wandering through the woods, trying to find Utsutse. And these ninjas are checking him out, and they attack. Pretty quick action scene, but it's so good. I like this, just showing the swords. Ka-tang, tang. And he makes short work of these ninjas. But then he notices some mushrooms on the trees. So once again, we have this weird thing where Kogashira wears a mushroom hat. Or helmet, I should say. But there's always seems like mushroom is almost like his spirit flora or fungus. His spirit fungus, yes, that's it. And so it kind of clues Uzumo that he's there, that Kogashira is there. Chops the tree. Yes, he was in the tree. He falls down and he attacks. And then we see an arm fall from the tree and his helmet, which we will see again. It's a magic helmet. But he escapes. And the camera pulls back and zooms back in. And we see the Kogashira nursing his wounds, his chopped off arm. And he's saying to himself, I had no idea he was that good. Damn my carelessness. I can never say that word. Carelessness. Oh, God. I need a drink. Okay, number 16. Another cover that has nothing to do with the insides, but it's kind of nice nonetheless. Swordwind, Chapter 2. And this is the part 1 of After Sunset. So now the scene shifts to Owari, the Owari Han. Apparently, there's all this tree felling, and developing of wasteland for new rice fields going on. So the local rulers have basically impressed all of these peasants to do the work, and there's so much work that they're even like kind of gathering up vagabonds and wanderers and making them work too. So this is the perfect spot. Perfect place for Kamui to hide out. I'd even mention, it's kind of weird, we have 2 issues of Kamui without Kamui. Those last 2 we just looked at. The editor in the letter page even comments on it, like tries to explain it like, okay, things are done differently in manga. Because that was not done in American comics. That would freak people out. So they go through this whole editorial just to explain it. So on this work crew, Kamui's kind of become friends with this old guy. I don't know why, but I love the way he draws this old guy's face. It's like something Jordi Bernay would draw. And so finally it's lunch break, and Kamui and the old guy say, yeah, let's just, for once, let's get some town food. We'll go into town, go to a little restaurant, get some good food for once. The old guy gets a tree branch whacked into his eye, and Kamui uses his ninja knowledge, makes a little poultice and puts a bandage around it. But he doesn't let anyone know he's a ninja. He's hiding his skills. He's been doing this for a while, just wandering around. Kamui basically lets him know that he knows he's a samurai. He can tell. And the old samurai says, you know, I think there's something more to the eye with you, too. You're not just a wanderer. But of course, Kamui says nothing. So they go into town. And they're just at this restaurant, getting to know each other, chatting. I kind of like how they're eating tempura, which I guess in the late 1600s, this was a very new food. I don't know why I thought that was interesting. Just like, yeah, I guess at one time there was no tempura. It just seems like it's always been around. And then all of a sudden, these hoodlums walk into the bar. You can tell by everyone's reaction that everyone's afraid of these guys. God, I love what a motley crew these guys are. Just a bunch of weirdos, a bunch of misfits. And they basically go up to Kamui and say, you're in our way, boy. What, you deaf? And Kamui gets up and they attack him. And Kamui doesn't fight back at all. He takes it all. Lets them rough him up. But the old samurai gets up and he says, basically stands up for Kamui. And he says, let's step outside. We'll settle this out there. Look at these guys. A bunch of mutants. And so the fight begins. Sorry. I was just looking at this fight again. God, I love shit like this. So he's kicking their asses, this old samurai. But he's an old guy, and he lands and hurts his knee. It distracts him enough that these 2 guys get the drop on him. And then all of a sudden from the crowd, someone throws a rock. Hits one of the attackers right in the forehead. Which gives the old samurai enough time to dispatch them. Man, look how scratchy and rough that is. I love this panel. So these guys are dead. These thugs. The cops show up, and we find out that this guy is Genshin, one of the most revered swordsmen in Japan. And this cop is in awe. Gets down on his knees. It's like, my brother studied under you. Please come to my house for dinner. It would be an honor, but he can't. So he goes off to be by himself, and then he kind of reminisces about his life. So Genshin was the official swords master of Mikahan. He studied the Shinto school. He was just amazing. Obviously, he was the sword master. But one day, some guy challenged him. And for one of the first few times in his life, this guy soundly beat him. But he almost couldn't accept his defeat. He basically just said, fight me again. Like, he can't believe that he lost. 3 times, 3 losses. So he's totally shamed. And that day, he abandoned his position as official sword master and started a journey to improve his swordsmanship. He slept in fields, trained in mountains. Fought other swordsmen, fought matches with swordsmen of other schools, dueled all comers, and so he passed the lowly days of his life. So weird, like, living like that. It seems like a very Japanese thing. Like, it's so noble to dedicate yourself to just one skill. And it just seems like I don't know, not a very good life, though. You only got one life. I don't know if I'd want to become the best swordsman and do nothing else. So now, still in flashback mode, he gets to the Shinkage school, where Genpo Yagyu is the swords master. And he agrees to fight him in a duel, even though his school forbids it. And pretty quickly, Genpo defeats him. They're just using wooden swords because it's not like a real duel. It's more like a match. And so Genpo tells him, he says, your talent and techniques are first class, but times change, so does swordsmanship. You're using these outdated forms. And he basically tells Genshin that the Shinkage school has no particular set forms. The formless form, they call it. Flexible responses to an opponent's moves is the most important thing, ever flowing, ever changing. So it's very Zen Buddhist, their whole fighting style. He asks Genshin, he says, this is Morobashi, the principle of change. Do you understand? And Genshin thinks to himself, he says, I cannot. He spent years polishing and perfecting his Shinto technique, and he just can't accept that he has to throw it all away and start over, basically. So he's just very sad about it. But then Kamui shows up now. And he asks Kamui, he says, when my knee gave out during the fight, someone threw a stone. Was it you? Kamui denies it. And then all of a sudden, Genshin attacks him. And Kamui's just leaping away, just saying, what are you doing? What the hell's going on? And he throws a knife at Kamui, and Kamui doesn't dodge it like we know he could. Allows himself to be stabbed. And the cliffhanger is Genshin is coming in for the killing blow. Pretty exciting stuff there. Now we got number 17. This is kind of different than the other ones. This just looks like a piece of line art, kind of crude line art, just colored over. So it's not even a painting. But it still has nothing to do with what's inside the comic. There's no little kid in here. So now we have the Swordwind Chapter 2 still, and the second part of After Sunset. So we start where we left off. Genshin is attacking Kamui, and finally he relents. He says, forgive me, I suspected that you might have had hidden abilities, so I tested you. So Kamui basically says, it's only a scratch. Don't worry about it. And he looks pretty unhinged there. He tells Kamui to go on. He'll catch up later. He remembered he had something to do. So he's walking through this little area here, and we see these bad guys checking him out. He's onto them. He knows he's being pursued. And then they attack. And it's a bunch of ninjas. Retsuinen. They're basically ninja hunters. And even though the other fight scenes in the first couple issues were a little short, now we get some nice action here. It's weird, like, a lot of people diss superhero comics. They're like, it's just fight scenes. 20 pages of fight scenes with a little dialogue. But I gotta say, if Shirato wanted to do a 48-page fight scene, I'd fucking love it. Just the way he draws the choreography of fighting and stuff. I would totally dig it. And we almost get that in this issue. So the ninjas attack with all these cool weapons, blinding gas bombs, whatever these things on the chain are. And he's doing pretty good. He's fending them off, knocking their knives out of the air with his sword. Man, look at that. It's almost just pure abstraction. This stuff is so wicked. So cool. So he's doing pretty good for an old guy. With his outdated Shinto style. I love this. One of these guys gets up on the other ninja's shoulder. They're like a double-decker ninja. And they both attack him. And it looks like the old guy's slowing down finally. And they're starting to land more blows. Hitting him with more knives. And he's not doing too good. They're really tearing into him. And look at this. I love this one. This is, I guarantee you, Frank Miller saw this when he was a young man. I see a lot of Frank Miller in this. Love these sound effects, too, by Stan Sakai. Really great stuff. But that's just an amazing little drawing there. So it's not looking too good for Genshin. But Kamui hears the ruckus, runs back. And I guess the time for hiding his ninja skills is past. He can't afford to do that now because he wants to save Genshin. Starts out by throwing rocks again at these guys. And then I was kind of confused at this. It was just all of a sudden we see this barrel rolling. I'm like, what? And I guess Kamui's using it as cover. He's rolling right behind the barrel. And all their knives are falling into the barrel and they're trying to get him. And then he leaps up, throws knives down at these guys, just rains them down on them. God, I love this panel too. They're just totally all after him. And he's avoiding all of their attacks expertly. Oh, this is so amazing. Does this flip? And in midair, upside down, he just chops this guy's head in half, which of course Shirato spends a whole other panel showing us in loving detail the gore of it. And then the double-decker guys attack him. I love this. Kamui just rolls onto the ground and chops the guy's legs off. Right at the knee. This is fun stuff. Really like this. Chopping off arms, chopping off heads. And finally all the ninjas are dead. And I guess Genshin is still alive. And he says, well done. I knew you had some skills. And he basically says, I'm an old man. My time is done. And he gives up the ghost. So now time has passed. And Utsutse and the Kogashira show up. They come upon the carnage that Kamui left. All their dead ninja brethren. And Utsutse says, you were supposed to wait for us. And this dying guy, I guess one guy's still alive. He says, yeah, but this other guy interfered. But we know who the attacker was by his sword style. Kamui. So they know Kamui's in the area. And then there's just odd little scene. So all of a sudden we see this guy running towards them and a dog's chasing him. And this dog's nipping at his heels. Looks pretty scary, this dog. And without a backwards glance, this Guy just chops the dog's head off. And we realize it's a Zumoshima who's been hunting Utsutse since Owari. And he attacks those guys. I guess maybe the dog was a distraction or something? I don't know. Just very strange. So Utsutse basically takes off. The Kogashira says, "Go, I'll take care of him." Really nice panel again. Almost Kieskuro. I should learn how to say that word if I'm going to use it. And we just got like 20 pages of action. Now we get a few more. This is great. And once again, the Kogashira drops some smoke bombs and eludes him. Takes off. He escapes. And of course, Izumo's not too happy about it. It's a very expressive drawn face there of anger. And so as we end the story, we see a close-up of the dead face of Genshin. It says, "The sun is set, but the destination is still far away. Some are chased and some chase those who are chasing. The road is dark and time waits for no man." So that's the end of this chapter. Pretty great stuff. I'm really digging these. So there you go, guys. Kamui number 14 through 17. I hope you enjoyed watching them as I flip the pages. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.